Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of your Bish Therapist podcast. I am your host, Melissa Reich, your Bish therapist, a real-life therapist turned pop culture aficionado, serving clinical interpretations and hot takes on all things pop culture. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a little bit of a lot of things. First off, I'm going to give some updates on my mental health and my health, which aren't two separate things, but sometimes people like to think they are. I have had some stuff going on and it's been really stressful and my mental health has not been in a good space. So I'm just going to share a little bit about that and talk a little bit about the things that I do to help because I know that that helps you all. I am also going to be talking about some Bravo news. And then I'm going to be covering the Valley, Summer House, and a little bit of Love Island. Now, I am recording this. A new episode of Love Island aired yesterday, but I was just too tired to watch it. And I couldn't watch it today. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten my podcast out in time. So I'm going to cover specifically what happened, but I really have a theory after literally just watching 2 episodes why Shannon chose the partners that she chose. It's super clear to me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So to start out, for those of you who haven't listened to the last few podcasts, I basically was sick, really sick, since the beginning of April. And first food poisoning, then a cold that turned into an upper respiratory infection that just lingered and lingered and lingered. And, that's for me the part of having CLL. This is where I really notice it. Where a healthy person like my husband, he'll get a cold and then he'll recover. And then I'll get one and then I'll end up in urgent care and on a million different medications. And it takes me months to recover. So I look very healthy. And my skin has never looked better, but my body really has been having a hard time. And so when my body has a hard time, my mental health has a hard time. And so I've experienced a peak in depression and very serious anxiety because the thing is too, when you're really, really sick, it makes you realize, whether you're aware of it or not, that you really have no control over anything. And most humans, everything they do is to just gain some sort of sense of control typically. But when being sick for over a month really even challenged me, like I understand that I have no control, but it just put my headspace. It was just not great. And, then I started to have anxiety, about food and, after getting food poisoning and then my eating disorder issues kind of popped up. And so I hate talking about this, but I'm just going to be candid with you all because I know that it helps. So here's what I have done to get myself in a better space. And I'm not going to lie, today I don't feel in a good space. But today is one of those days that I'm practicing that very important and annoying skill of acting opposite. So acting opposite is one of my favorite skills that I love to use is when you're feeling depressed or anxious and you know that you're safe. You know that you're safe, you know that you're okay, and you understand kind of maybe what's going on for you. Acting opposite can be really helpful because it forces you to do the things that you know will help you, but you just don't feel like it because of, the mental health stuff. And so me recording this podcast today is acting opposite. I'm not going to lie. I didn't want to record. We had, it was Mother's Day weekend and I've been so sick. And then I actually had a little issue. I can't really talk about it yet. I had a fall. I was very injured from that. I am healing from that, but it's been really hard. And I will talk about it more when I can. And so today I just knew that this would be helpful, not only for me, but for you. I appreciate all the support that I get and being consistent with my podcast is really, really important. And so I decided what I'm going to do is act opposite, do this podcast today, and then it's clear that I need a break. So don't worry, it's probably going to be in June. I still have a couple episodes that I need to do as promised. I am going to be covering Frankie, or whatever her dumb name is. God, I'm not looking forward to that. But I feel like I just, for her children, I think it's really important to tell the story and to, support them by, sharing their experience, strength, and hope and things like that. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm also going to cover Natalia Grace. And, Bravo is on a little bit, not of a dry spell. I mean, Miami's going to come back. And Andy says that Miami is great. But can I be frank with you? I don't trust Andy anymore when it comes to him saying if seasons are good. because I think he also said Beverly Hills was good. And I was like, no, it wasn't. Speaking of which, Beverly Hills news came in the Bravoverse that they're all coming back. Well, except of course for Garcelle, which to me, Garcelle made the show worth watching. Now it's just going to be all of them in some dumb pact to just like not talk about anything that they don't want to talk. I don't know. I'm just really annoyed by the Beverly Hills franchise. I'm really annoyed that everyone is coming back. I feel that, I don't know. I'm just not excited about it. And so I hope they prove me wrong. I hope that Kyle takes the opportunity to actually use it to share a little bit of her life and her actual feelings. And if she doesn't, why is she there? I used to be the biggest Kyle supporter, but I just, I don't. It's like these housewives, they're so big now. They're so important to the network that it's like they call the shots and it's like, okay. So I'm not excited at all about that, but hopefully that'll change my mind. So anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent, but back to my acting opposite and mental health stuff. And so I'm going to be taking a break probably for a month to 6 weeks. Now, when I take my breaks, I will let you all know, and B, I will still post episodes to Patreon, Spreaker Supporters Club, and YouTube subscription services. And so you can go to Patreon, Your Bish Therapist. There, you can go to YouTube, Your Bish Therapist channel. And Spreaker Supporters Club. There are links to everything. So where you're listening to this podcast now, if you scroll down, there are links to all of those subscription services. And if not, that's not a problem. I will see you, in 6 weeks or so. But don't worry, I have a couple more episodes coming. So going and so I feel like a break is really important for my mental and physical health. So, that's kind of the other piece with this is that I always feel bad taking breaks, but I know that I need to when it starts to feel like a chore and it starts to feel like, the thing for me is that I have a million appointments all the time. Like I have 2 today. I have to go to the chiropractor and then I have an appointment with a movement disorder specialist because of my dystonia. And so for me, my health is a full-time job between weekly therapy, chiropractor, acupuncture, doctor's appointments. It's a lot. And so I've been in season 4 now for, I think this is the 20th episode. And this is usually the time I start to feel really emotionally and physically fatigued because I put everything into these episodes. I'm the type of person like, if I'm going to do something, do it. And I don't want to do something half-assed. As Ron Swanson said on Parks and Recreation, don't half-ass 2 things, whole-ass 1 thing. So I really want to whole-ass this podcast. It's been a tough month. So in addition to acting opposite, I also have a gentle movement, which falls under acting opposite because sometimes if you have chronic health issues and you're really fatigued and you're really, not feeling well, sometimes gentle movement can feel really counterintuitive. And sometimes it is. It's just you really have to know your body. But for me, gentle movement has been really important. What does that entail for me? Short walks at a reasonable pace, kind of stretching. We have a foam roller, kind of using that to just like stretch muscles. But I have to be careful because I have hypermobility, Ehlers-Danlos. And so stretching for me can be tricky too. But fortunately, I kind of know, like after physical therapy and stuff, I know how to do that. So I guess the point is just like listen to your body and do the things that your body responds well to. Vitamin D has been huge. So I supplement with vitamin D because I think that's really important for mental health, truly. To have your vitamin D levels be, optimal. It's the only blood count of mine that is optimal, by the way. So I'm very proud of that. But like real sun in your face, and on your skin and just, kind of face to the sun and just breeze in your face and all of that good stuff. And plus for me, my 2 favorite things, vitamin D and nature, are combined because I live in the woods and I'm super, super lucky that way. But for me, nature is one of those things that being in nature really does help me remember that I am very small. Like when I start to get into my pity pool, which I have been, by the way, nature helps me remember how small and insignificant I am. Which really is helpful because it helps me get out of the pity pool. It helps me remember like my gratitude. It helps me remember that like, okay, things have been hard for me, but I'm okay and I will be okay. And I'm fortunate enough to have the support of an amazing husband, and I have a beautiful home, and I have all the things that I could possibly need to feel happy and fulfilled here. And so I'm so grateful for that. And so this is a skill that helps me develop humility, gratitude, and all that other stuff when I just want to be like, like Queen Baby, like life's not fair. Yeah, it isn't. No one ever said that it was. So I just have to move past that. And, I know last time I talked about this, a lot of people, it really resonated with a lot of people. Just a reminder that the pity pool, it's a cyclical thing. It's like you don't get out and then never get back in. Yeah, I dove in head first after being sick for a couple of weeks. I was like, oh, fuck this. So I am getting out of the pity pool. I'm very pruny, but I'm developing gratitude, humility, greater understanding. Honestly, sometimes it also feels exhausting, doing this cycle, like having awareness, accountability, humility, and like kind of having that self-actualized stuff is also annoying because it's like, it's a lot of work, but it really is worth it. In my opinion, it really is worth it because this is how I get out of these kind of mental health dips that I have. This is really what helps me. And then the last thing I'll say is just doing something that you love. I do love doing this podcast, so that's a check for me today. And then also, I really love making or faux orchid displays, but really beautiful ones. I'll have to post on my Patreon and my social media for you to see. But I make these big, gorgeous faux orchid displays. And the reason that it started is because I love those. First of all, I love an orchid, but I feel like I don't know how to keep them alive. I really don't understand. You try the ice and then I don't know, it just dies and then it sticks and then it's like it comes back. But, the whole thing just confuses me. And if you have any tips on how to keep orchids alive, please let me know. I do not have a green thumb in any way, shape, or form. So I just started making the faux ones because I was like, well, these won't turn into sticks and I'm not wasting my money. And then, it turned into a little bit of a hobby and people say I should sell them. But then it's like, well, they're heavy. I can't ship them. I'd have to sell them locally. And I live in an area where people are cheap AF. No one wants to pay for anything here, if I'm being honest. So anyway, I will post some pictures of those, and I am working on a new one that I'm really excited about. And also it makes the home really beautiful and they make lovely gifts. So I just encourage, people listening to this, if this resonates with you, just do something that you enjoy. Having a tree or, any of the things that I mentioned, acting opposite, I highly recommend because for me, it's annoying, but it is also the most effective. I already feel better. 15 minutes into this podcast, I already feel so much better than I did when I started this morning. I feel happy and joyous and, just happy to be talking to all of you and, sharing my experience, strength, and hope. So that's the update on that. And I guess the last thing I'll say when it comes to the mental health stuff is like the biggest skill that a lot of therapists maybe don't talk about is just like tolerating. Sometimes when I've been in a really bad space or my mental health is not great, the best skill I can have is just tolerating the discomfort and then doing these other things to help me feel better. So sometimes tolerating discomfort is so annoying, but it is all we can do. And I believe that our greatest strength lies in facing the darkest parts of ourselves, the parts that maybe you don't want to think about or talk about or tell anyone about. When we make those dark parts like inaccessible or we put them on a shelf and we never go back to it, they turn into monsters. They turn into ghosts that like haunt us. And I believe in squarely facing the darkness, embracing it and saying, can you teach me? And I do feel for me that's been incredibly helpful because those darkest parts, there's lessons in that too. It's just harder to sift them out because it's so, it's just so challenging. So I hope this has helped you because it certainly has helped me. So thank you for listening. A couple more updates. So my niece, my sweet little niece, she's 7 years old. She had her endoscopy and she has celiac disease, but she has it severely that it's impacting her esophagus. There's patches on her esophagus that are thickened and they have eosinophils and all this other stuff. And so that's also been stressing me too, because for me, I don't have children. And I didn't know what love was, I swear, until my nieces and nephew were born. I swear to you, like they were born and I was like, I had no idea I could love anything this much. No idea. Like I wanted to tattoo their faces like under my eyelids so I could see them all times. I just love them so much. And just like, so I just want to protect them and I want to keep them safe. And speaking of like feeling out of control when stuff is going on with kids, it's like, oh my God, that is just like beyond stressful. So for all the people listening to this that care for children, whether they're yours or they're not, kudos, because it is a tough job. It's very emotionally heavy. I don't know that that gets talked about enough. Whether you're a parent, adoptive parent, godparent, surrogate parent, God, whatever it is, I think that having loving children and giving them the best you got is really, really amazing. And so to all the people who do that, I just give you a lot of credit. And it's, that leads to anxiety too, right? Because it's like, well, geez, I can control things for me, but I really can't control them for her. And so the tough thing with her is not only is it celiac, but she also has a sucrose intolerance. She cannot eat any more than 2 grams of sugar, which is like for people who know if you have children with diabetes or, other health conditions, that's really hard. And she also cannot eat dairy. So her GI system is just so, her poor little immune system is just not great. And so there's a lot of work left to do for that. But that's also been stressing me out. But she's a rock star. I mean, she's just like, she's tough as nails. She's just, she really amazes me. And so I look to her for strength too, even though she's 7 and she probably doesn't realize it. And so we're just figuring out she has to see a registered dietitian because, the thing with gluten-free stuff is sometimes it has a lot of sugar in it and she can't have that either. And we don't want her growing up with food issues because there's so much that she can't eat. So we want to make sure that we're giving her the best ability to eat all the rich, nutritious, healthy foods within what her system can tolerate. So I'm happy that we have an answer. A little bit stressed about what that means, but especially we live in an area where, my husband and I, we used to live in Philly. But now we live like in the Wilkes-Barre Scranton area. And yes, where the office was not filmed, but it was based in Scranton, like for the show. And so, yes, that's where we live in that area. And here I'm telling you, this area is behind the times at least 20 years. Like, I'm not joking in terms of fashions. I was listening the other day, I got in my car and before somehow Sirius, it was like, I have Sirius XM. And I love listening to Radio Andy and all those other shows. But somehow the radio was on and Three Doors Down was playing. Unironically, Three Doors Down. I mean, Three Doors Down was popular, what, in the 90s? 2000s? I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. So there aren't a ton of gluten-free options. However, we do have Wegmans. They have some gluten-free options. There's like a bakery or two far up in Clark Summit. My point is that it's slim pickings here, but I'm going to go to the ends of the earth for my girl, get her anything she wants. I'm going to get it for her. So it's just going to take a little bit of extra work. Unfortunately, we have no Trader Joe's here. They stop in Philly and they don't go past Allentown. So that's annoying. But sometimes we just go to Philly. Sometimes my husband and I were like, do you want to go on an adventure? Let us go to Philly, go to Trader Joe's. And we go to eat at one of our favorite restaurants. We used to live in Bluebell, Pennsylvania, and we love Phil's Tavern. Shout out to the Phils. If anyone listening to this eats at the Phil's, loves Phil's, let me know because we're meant to be buddies. And then the last update I have is that I am so excited. I'm going to be going on Pink Shade Podcast with Mary Payne. And Mary Payne and I, we have a lot of podcast partners in common. She did the show with Amy in Chicago. Mandy's been on her show. And so we just have a lot of people in common. And she texted me and was like, hey, we have so many people in common. Would love for you to come on the show. And of course, I'm going to reciprocate and have her back on probably after my break, because I'm thinking my break is going to be like June to mid-July, something like that. But anyway, I'm really excited to meet her officially and to be on the show. I love Pink Shade Pod. And that is I'm going to be on May 22nd. It will air, but don't worry, I will post links to that everywhere, so you can take a listen to that. Alrighty. And now, before I get into the Valley and Summer House in Love Island, one thing I want to address is that Real Housewives of Atlanta, I have been loving. Okay, I've been watching it. I've been loving it. But when I post about it, no one cares. And so I did a poll on my Instagram stories of like, do you still want me to cover Atlanta? And it was like 50-50. And so many people don't care, which is so weird to me because it really is so good. Now, the one thing I've talked about in the last episode, Phaedra came back. Right. And so it's like you're going to, again, that's my major beef with this. It's like you're going to, put Kenya on an island and then bring back another problematic person that just did something problematic just years ago that most people have forgotten. And it's crazy. Like Portia forgives her and she's the person that she threw under the bus. I know that Candy has not forgiven Portia. And so I just feel like there's a lot of fans that I've talked to that they feel it's really hypocritical and some people don't want to see Phaedra and I don't blame them for that. So I've been enjoying it up until the time Phaedra came back. And listen, I think Phaedra is very smart. I think she's freaking hilarious. And I think that she does bring a lot. I just personally have a hard time getting past such an egregious thing that she did, which for those who don't remember it was she accused Candy of wanting to drug and sexually assault Portia. And she used Portia the whole season to continue that rhetoric, which was false and completely made up. And she got busted for it at the reunion. And, Portia clearly forgives her, but it's like, I think Portia also just wants allies and she knows that Portia will be an ally or Phaedra will be an ally to her. So I haven't watched that episode with Phaedra yet. I will let you guys know what I think, but I'm happy to talk about it on the podcast. I just some people who still want me to cover it are mad. And I'm like, it's a lot of work for me to watch these shows, for me to type up my things. It takes hours because I want to make sure they're, well written. And yes, of course, sometimes I've typed. People love to point out when I have a typo. And it's like, well, sometimes my brain doesn't work really well. It's a miracle I can do any of this. And it's free content. So, I don't know why people complain about that. I'm imperfect. And I just have a couple of people who really look for tits on an ant when it comes to my typos. And it just really irritates me. So, embrace the imperfection or just let it go. I don't know what to tell you. So I don't want to do all that work if I'm not getting any engagement on Instagram, quite frankly. But I'm happy to talk about it on the pod because I think Atlanta, they're one of those franchises that has always been really great, but never a lot of people don't gravitate towards it. I don't understand. The women, they're so funny. They actually eat. They really know how to have a kiki. They have fun. They can fight, but then they can have fun. And I just love everything about it. I love that Cynthia Bailey's back. By the way, Cynthia Bailey is my Bravo, shoot my shot, would die to have her on the show. If anyone knows Cynthia or has any connections there, please let your girl know because I love Cynthia Bailey. She just does it so well. She had a Juneteenth party. It was really lovely. And I love that, by the way, Shamia, she was like, people forget my husband's from Kenya. I'm going to wear a dashiki. Shamia to me is the star of the season. I love every single solitary thing about her. In addition to Cynthia Bailey, Shamia, I would absolutely love to have on my show. So I'm just putting that out to the universe and let us see what happens. But for today, I'm going to be covering the Valley and Summer House and Love Island. So the one thing I'm going to say about Love Island, I'll talk about this quick before I move on to the two other shows, is that I watched 2 episodes of this show. Okay. It is Luann, Ashley Darby, Giselle Bryant, and Shannon Storms Bedore on this Love Island dating show. Joel Kim Booster is the host, and it's really interesting. The place that they're at is beautiful. It's really well done. And I think that Shannon, to me, the three women were literally made for Love Hotel. They were made for this show. Okay. Shannon sticks out like a sore thumb because you can tell she's just so uncomfortable and she is so insecure. But most importantly, which sucks because it's like, I think Shannon really is so fabulous. She's never looked better. Um, she has such a beautiful family and she's done all these things with business. And I don't know. I just think Shannon is too fabulous to be having these self-esteem issues. Like, listen, all women have self-esteem issues. And it's like, it just goes to show that it doesn't matter how much money you have or fame, or if you're on a show or whatever, like being a woman is challenging. There's a lot of messages we get and, about our bodies and about the way we look, and we're held to a different standard. It's like men age, and they look like George Clooney, and then women age and we look like old witches. And it's like, well, that's fucked up. So, I'm just kidding. Sometimes I feel like I'm looking like an old witch as I age, but I've learned to talk to my body better than that. So just a joke. Clearly, but I think that in all sincerity, women, we are really given messages. And so I just feel like I fully understood. So Shannon on episode 1 said that she had never been in love. And I was like, what? Not only was she with David for, gosh, I should have looked this up. She was with David for, I want to say, at least a decade. They had 3 beautiful children together. And, and it's like, we all knew that David was a douche, right? Like, David sucks. He, by the way, he is the reason that Jeff Lewis, they call themselves the Chumps, because early on when Jeff had Shannon on his show, David Bedore would reach out to them because he was like pissed off that he was being talked about. And he called Jeff and his friend chumps. And so that is where the chump thing came from, which I kind of love that they actually co-opted that and like made it their own. But make no mistake, David Bedore sucks. And then of course we all know Johnny J. But it's like, remember how Shannon talked about Johnny J, like they were so in love, and then it's like, no, they were never in love. And I'm like, I don't understand this. Well, here comes episode 2, and it all became very clear to me. So I want to share it with you. So on Love Island, there are all these men that are basically clamoring over the rest of the women and not Shannon, which again, sucks because Shannon's a beautiful woman. But I just think like attitude wise, like Countess Luann, Ashley, and Giselle, they're really fun. They're really funny. They have a great sense of humor. Shannon really doesn't. I think she can be funny and she can have a good sense of humor, but I think she's too, like on Love Island, she's too in her head in my perspective. You can tell she's like overthinking stuff and she's like worried about, is she going to be liked? And so I think the other guys, they can kind of sense that too. And so that basically all the other guys were super into the other 3. And then there's one guy, Earl, who is into Shannon. And Shannon it was like a light bulb moment. Shannon didn't really seem to like him, but then it was like, I don't want to be him. She didn't say this. This is the impression that I got. She's like, I don't want to be the only person here who doesn't have anyone that's into them. Earl's the only one that's into me, so I'm going to choose him. Otherwise, I have nobody. And to me, and none of this was spoken, but to me, I'm like, oh, okay, that explains how she was with David and Johnny J and how she keeps like picking these bad men. And there was a scene where Shannon said, and I recorded it and I'm going to post about it. And she admitted, she's like, I have a bad picker. She's like, I have a history of picking narcissists and I need to choose a different type of guy. That's what she said. And then I think she panicked. She tried to choose this guy, Ralph, who I think that's his name. He's like jacked, older dude, silver fox, super handsome, but to me doesn't have much of a personality, but he is really attractive. And he's super fit. And she initially went for him. But then Ralph was into Giselle and I believe Countess Luann. And so there was like this one challenge where each of them had to pick someone, and Giselle, Luann, and Shannon picked Ralph. And Ralph had to end up choosing someone, and he chose Giselle. Now, with Giselle, it's probably not going to be a match, but it was so funny. Giselle said that, by the way, but it was so funny because after Ralph chose Giselle, Shannon was like, well, I guess that's over with Ralph. So I guess I'm going to choose Earl, because if I don't choose Earl, who else am I going to pick? And it's like, that's how you end up with narcissists. That's how you end up with people who you don't really love, but you want to pretend that you do. Like that, this is how, Shannon, this is how it happens. And so I understand probably what it feels like to not be picked, right? Like, I think many women have had their hearts broken, not been chosen, etc. I am no different. And so I understand that feeling, but she's picking this guy because he's the only one that's into her. And I feel like she doesn't want to feel embarrassed. And I think we've seen where that gets Shannon. So when she said like, oh, well, Ralph's not an option anymore, it's like, girl, why? You are on a dating show. Who cares he chose Giselle? Go back after your boy. And she doesn't. She just chooses Earl, gets comfortable, holds hands, fake laughs, pretends that she really likes him. And so I'm bummed out I didn't get to watch the most recent episode because it was last night at like 9 or something. And I was just too tired. I was just exhausted. Couldn't do it. But apparently there's like an issue that happens with Earl. He's like rude to her and she ends up walking away, doing her like whole Shannon, like, wow, I cannot believe this. Wow. Oh my gosh. So I'm very interested to see what happens, and I'll be talking about this again after it does. But I just feel like I have Shannon's number here, and if I could talk to her directly, I would say it's not about do men like you, it's about do you like them. I would rather Shannon be single and find her single happiness rather than choose some dumb dude that she doesn't even like because he's the only one that likes her. Like Shannon is too fabulous to just choose some Joe Schmo because she feels like she needs a partner. You don't. And I understand it's a show. I understand that. But I'm really just hoping that Shannon is able to gain some insight through watching this, because I'm telling you, this is exactly how it happens for her. And too often women do that. They don't even like the person that they're with, but they feel, oh, well, this person really likes me. They show me a lot of love and support. And it's like, we need to stop dating people or being with people who like us, but we don't really like them. Wait for the person that you really want to be with. And if that includes heartbreak, well, then that's fine too. I would rather, me personally, be really into someone, be heartbroken, than settle for someone who I don't even really like. That doesn't make for a happy relationship. It doesn't make for a happy marriage. It's not fun to either partners. But I do think, sadly, it's something that happens all the time. People settle. And not just women, right? Everyone does this. So I'm going to move on now, but that is my thoughts on Love Hotel. And when I watch the new episode where Earl like flips out about something, of course he does. Because like Shannon said, she is a bad picker. So, I'm certain Earl's a douche and I can't wait to see all about that. Okay, but let us move on. First, I'm going to talk about Summer House because the Valley to me is just like, toxic, toxic, toxic. How many more ways can I say that it's toxic? But I do have a couple things to say about it. So breaking news from Summer House, the door has been fixed. Amanda and Kyle came and they were like, what is this? Does it open and does it close? Has it actually been fixed? They were like, holy shit. And I swear to you, I think the audience was like, oh my God. Shocker. And so it was like, it's funny, the door almost took the thunder of Lexi and Jesse coming together, which, by the way, everyone was shocked. I certainly was not. These two people have I'm going to explain what I think is going on. But I was not shocked at all that they showed up together, even though they basically broke up last episode. And I have more information about that. But so I'm more shocked about this door being fixed. Humans are pretty consistent in their behavior from my experience. But this door, I just thought it was a Summer House cast member. It was never going to get fixed. And that was the whole shtick. But it is now fixed, which I do feel better. Like just in terms of their safety, I feel like there's so many people in and around the Summer House. The door doesn't work really well. I know there's cameras and everything, but like I do genuinely like just am mindful of people's safety personally. And I don't know if that's just me being a middle-aged woman or whatever, but I'm like, do those doors really close well? We need to protect these sweet people at all costs. So I Watch What Happens Live after the episode, and w- I found some interesting clues in here. So Lexi admitted that she didn't want the summer to be a waste. So she decided to resuscitate this relationship with Jesse for another weekend because at this point, Summer House is coming to an end. I think the last episode, it was the second to last weekend, which bumps me out because Summer House, it gives Bravo to me. It's like the sorbet that we all need. It's just genuinely, there's drama, but it's genuinely so fun. I love the cast members. They all love each other. They have such a sweet love and support for one another, and they're just good people. And it really, you don't see that a lot on Bravo anymore. And so I'm like, oh, I hate that it's coming to an end. But that also means the reunions will be coming, which I am here for. And reunions are my favorite thing. Like, even if I don't watch a show, I'll watch the reunion. Yeah, I know it's wild, but it's actually my favorite thing to do is not watch a show and then like watch a reunion like Southern Hospitality and try to like get all my, observations from there. But anyway, so Lexi was like, well, I don't want this to be a waste, which is really, it's immature thinking because it's like, well, I don't know that that's a good reason to stay with somebody, but, I understand it. And so on Watch What Happens Live, Lexi admitted that she felt it was better to be in Jesse's quote unquote good graces for the last 2 weeks rather than to break up and deal with that. And I just thought, yikes. Yikes on bikes. That is so telling of both Lexi and Jesse. Because to me, that feels really icky. Like she knows that she wasn't going to stay with Jesse, but she just like wanted to put it off until they could be done for the summer and then she didn't have to see him anymore. Like, I don't love that. And I also, it's Jesse's fault that he has behaved the way that he has and that she would rather, just like not rock the boat. I mean, he plays a role in that for sure. But then, so everyone arrives to the summer house and Jesse, again, he and Lexi are doing this group chat, which, okay, I'm going to talk about this group chat. I posted it on my Instagram page, and people last week, I said that like Lexi to me, her mom and her sister give me kind of flavors of enmeshment and codependency, are close, but they do things together like they club together. Lexi's in her 20s and I don't, I love my niece. She's 18 years old. If she wanted me to go clubbing with her, I don't know how comfortable I would feel with that. But also, I'm not trying to shame it either because it's like everyone has a different relationship with their child. But I just feel like Lexi, if I'm being honest, I feel like Lexi and her mom and her sister are kind of like angling for a show, to be honest. I think that to me, Lexi, it gives me a little bit of flavors of like manipulation and, just some of the decisions that she's made. And especially like, so for example, last week they had a group discussion, which I said I didn't think was healthy. And everyone was like, well, I could see why she did it because she wanted to get to the truth. And it's like, well, of course, I could see that too. But I also like when you're playing chess, right? You can see a couple moves down the road. That's how I am as a therapist in terms of like, I saw maybe why she wanted to do it in that situation, but it just didn't seem healthy. And then like, I felt like I was proven correct this week because again, they have this talk in a group setting. Which in fairness, when you're young and kind of emotionally immature, you do want the group to be in on it, right? Because you want validation, you want support. But in like healthy relationships, that's not what you want at all. Like if my husband and I have an issue, we're not calling my family over. I mean, that would be a real woof, by the way, but we're not calling families over. We're not calling friends over to be like, let's talk about this as a group. Like that's not super healthy. And so I understand the situation that they're in. It does facilitate group discussions. But like, again, Jesse was trying to spin his behavior, saying that his communication with Lexi was poor. And I was like, sure, Jan. I mean, Jesse just cannot be like, it was fucked up. I was wrong. It was uncool. He just can't do it. He is incapable of doing it. But we get a little bit of a background into why I think Jesse is having these issues. So Jesse admitted he said on the show that he really likes Lexi, but we've heard him tell her he loves her several times. And so Jesse revealed on this episode is that he was in love with only one other person in high school who cheated on him with his best friend. And he theorized that this may be the root of his commitment issues. And I was like, oh, yes, this is definitely not, I don't know if it's the root, but I want to say it's an important puzzle piece that was missing before. And so on Watch What Happens Live, Lexi played a game called, and Andy loves this. This is what I love about Andy, though. Andy is not afraid to talk about difficult issues. He leans into these shady games. And they played a game called Shady Toe, where Lexi was asked, what was the shadiest thing Jesse told you about his BFF, West? And Lexi happily answered that Jesse said West used the situation with Ciara to get famous. And I was like, shit, she really dropped that tea. And here's the thing, though. I fully believe he said this he made the comment in a moment of jealousy. Remember when he was mad that West and Lexi were like leaning on each other. And I was like, that's really weird and insecure. And even West was like, that's insane. And Lexi was like, ew, no. But now this explains that, right? So this history that Jesse has, it made him paranoid about that. And I believe in a moment of jealousy, he said this to Lexi to make West look bad. And I think that's who Jesse is. I think that he is loyal to nobody. And I think that, listen, I don't think he's a bad guy, but I just think he has a lot of maturing and growing up to do, to be honest. And so speaking of that, Ciara was fed up with these king babies. Like she was not having Jesse, she was not having West. And she said to Jesse, she was like, oh, you're not a liar. You're not two-faced. Is that the takeaway? Oof. And so here's the thing about Ciara. Ciara, I think, has issues with her family, issues with being loved and supported. And so I think that she kind of when she's hurt by someone, really hurt, she shuts herself out completely and is just really angry and sometimes kind of harsh. And so here's the thing. She was harsh in her delivery, but she's not wrong. She isn't wrong. And so I'm not going to tell Ciara how she needs to handle her anger. But what I will say is that I think when we are really hurt and we're closing ourselves off from people, that creates a bitterness and a feeling of anger in us that is not healthy for us. So I don't think she needs to forgive Jesse or West. I think they both really hurt her. And when you hurt someone like Ciara, she just closes her heart and she shuts you out and you're done with her. That pattern is not super healthy. She needs to learn, I think, how to have boundaries that are not so rigid and more flexible. But in fairness, I've been a Ciara where you hurt me, we're done here. This bridge is not just burnt, it's chopped out. Like there is no bridge to walk. And so I guess I relate to it. But I just think for Ciara's well-being, it would be better for her to learn how to manage that hurt for her own self because she's so fabulous and I just love her so much. So again, we watched, Amanda told Jesse, like, don't use the word joke because that's not what happened. And Jesse just like is incapable. And he again mentions the word joke to Ciara and she just rejected him completely. And the thing about Ciara, too, is like she can tell when people, like she's just intuitive, I believe. And she can just tell that Jesse's full of it. And, I think that doesn't help the cause of like being willing to have convos. And so the other thing going back to Lexi, her mom and her sister, like the codependence is that this was very odd that Lexi's mom and sister, after they went clubbing together with Jesse and Lexi, they went back to the house and had a 3-hour therapy session about their relationship. No, that's insane and that's too much. Here's the thing, okay? I'm a therapist, but if I'm your friend, I'm not your therapist. I'm not my family's therapist. I'm not my husband's therapist. Trying to cosplay some sort of weird, family meeting after going clubbing to me is totally inappropriate. If people are intoxicated, if people are tired, it's none of Lexi's mom and sister's business. And so I also just think Lexi, it's like, if you want to be in a relationship with Lexi, you're also in it with her mom and sister, which like to an extent is understandable, but I think it goes a step further. It just gives me icky feelings and I don't care for it. And so West is like a hater of this relationship, but he did call out the oddness of the meeting. And I fully agree with him. I think it was inappropriate. And I think that here's the last thing I'll say about Lexi and her family. I think that people in general think psychology is super easy. They think it's just basic common sense. They think it's like anyone can do it. And it's like, no. There are reasons why there's grad schools and doctoral schools, getting your PhD or your PsyD. There's, you have to get so many hours of actual real world experience before you can get a license. And there are reasons for this because you can't just like know what's going on intuitively. Like it does take, I think psychology is one of those specialties that everyone, like no one just thinks that they could be a doctor, but for some reason, everyone thinks they could be a therapist. And it's like, no, it's more complex and it's more, you do have to have this base of understanding of not only textbook knowledge from, actual studies and books, but then there's also the clinical real world experience where what you read in a book, how does it actually apply to humans? And, when you do that for over 2 decades, you learn a lot of things. And so I guess I just think that some people, they fancy themselves a therapist, and I guarantee that's probably more harmful than helpful. And so one thing I want to talk about before I move on to the Valley is that West, shared the loss of a college friend last year, and he admitted like he didn't know how to deal with the grief. He doesn't know how to express his grief, which by the way, is, the one thing I wanted to say is that society does men and boys a grave disservice by equating emotions to weakness or that emotions are somehow feminine, because the fact is you have to feel to heal. And our power lies in facing and befriending the darkest parts of our pain. When we demonize our pain, when we make it scary, we make our own ghosts, we make our own monsters. And so I think that men and boys need to get the message that feelings are human, right? We all have feelings. And here's how to deal with them when you feel tough feelings. And the answer is really talking about it. It makes me sad that West had this grief that he just never discussed. And I guarantee when you have grief feelings that are kept in your body and are not expressed, you're going to drink more. You're going to use substances. You're going to use maladaptive coping strategies because your body and your brain cannot tolerate that. It can't. So when you're holding in that emotion, bad things happen. And so at dinner, West acknowledged the difficulty owning his vulnerability, which I appreciated because that's great awareness on West's part. And it's fair enough, right? It's like, this is a West I can get behind. Yes, okay, you're having trouble owning your vulnerability. Totally fair. This is a good first step to talk about it on camera. And then, he admitted to crying for hours while Ciara held him, and Ciara got up to go to the bathroom, which at first I thought was really rude. But then you hear Ciara's feeling of like, she had such a hard time being reminded of the closeness that they once had. Like imagine, West is someone who doesn't share feelings easily or often. And he's crying in Ciara's arms for hours. And then he ghosts her and breaks up with her and all this other stuff. And it's like, that's grief for Ciara too, because I think she really, really liked West. And she thought it was something that he had no intention of. And so I just understand her hurt. And West needs to understand, and Jesse needs to understand that there are consequences to our behaviors when we hurt people. There are. And we don't get to say how other people who we've hurt treat us. And so, I thought that was really interesting. And then the last thing I'll say about Summer House is that, so we find out that Kyle, his sperm are actually working overtime, number one. And number two, Kyle was the voice of reason with Jesse. And I was like, who is this Kyle? This is a Kyle I can get behind. Kyle called out Jesse for trying to pin it all on Ciara, noting that she's the one who felt screwed over. And I was like, yes, Kyle, yes. And Paige and Lindsay just laugh and joke about the effectiveness of therapy. And I was like, yeah, oh, I love this interaction because it's true. I mean, Kyle, by through all intents and purposes, is a king baby, right? Most of the time. But this is not king baby behavior. This is great behavior. But Kyle, I believe his sperm and his himself, he's a medical marvel who should just be studied. This man is 42 years old, eats the craziest things in the night. So this episode, he ate the most gigantic muffin I've ever seen at 3 a.m. and wakes up for a run at 9 a.m. This man and his sperm are medical marvels. They should be studied because if I ate a grape at 3 a.m., I'd be in a coma the next day. Listen, you can't go by me because I'm the opposite end. I'm a medical marvel in a bad way. I have medical issues that doctors have only read about in books. No joke. They've never seen in real life their entire career until me. So I'm a medical marvel in that way. And really maybe, I'm joking, of course, but maybe this is a bit of jealousy on my part. But I'm like, my God, this man needs to be studied because his genetics, I am so jelly. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the Valley. There were a couple more things about Summer House, but, I've already been yapping too much. So let's go on to the Valley. So last episode of The Valley, I was kind of observing Michelle because I was starting to see how she contributes to some of her own issues, maybe how and why she chose Jesse, that sort of stuff. So the episode ended with Michelle saying that Jesse is by far worse than Jax. And I was like, ew, don't do that. Because number one, comparison can be a helpful skill if used properly, but this is not one of those circumstances. And I think, quite frankly, it's inaccurate. So Jesse and Jax, they definitely share, for sure, some personality characteristics, right? There's some narcissistic traits and tendencies. There is sometimes a lack of empathy. There is definitely a spitefulness. But we've watched Jesse own his behavior, insincere apologies to Kristen. He's also a very present parent to his child. And Jax could never, allegedly. But I mean, we watched Jax, just like, Brittany says, he's not really being a parent to Cruz because of his own stuff. And quite frankly, when we're, anyone in active addiction, you can't be a good anything, a good partner, a good parent, a good friend, a good worker. When you're in active addiction, your substance is your number one. It's your love of your life. It's your main priority. And so I just think, Jax is not capable of that because of his addiction. But then, so later in the episode, we watched Jesse curse at and threaten Janet in some sort of king baby temper tantrum. And at the end of the episode, Jesse had another outburst. He was threatening to bury the guy, Zach, off of a cliff. And then followed by yelling at Jason in production to get out of his room. He was wearing the grossest underwear. They were beige tighty whities, but they weren't tight. They were they looked like bloomers. They looked from those times, he looked like he was wearing bloomers. And I was like, are you a Victorian boy? What is with those underpants? What? Ew. Come on, dude. And he was just so drunk and angry and aggressive. And so it's it's not a contest, but Jesse certainly, he has skills and abilities that Jax doesn't have, but he of course, is super problematic. And so then the thing that I really needed to talk about is that we learned that Jax has been rage texting Brittany during his 15-minute breaks between therapy sessions. And so Bravo fans were asking, do legitimate facilities allow smartphone usage? And so the short answer is some do, yes. Many do not. So I will tell you, inpatient facilities vacillate regarding rules, regulations, and structure. Okay. Many facilities will confiscate phones and use, so for example, the facility that I worked at, they had payphones, literal payphones in the phone area. So people were allowed to use the phones, any screen. So iPad, cell phone, whatever it was, that got confiscated and it was in with their patient belongings for the duration of their stay. And when they wanted to make phone calls, they had a strict 15-minute limit. And there are reasons for this, which I will tell you. And they had to be at the phone bank, and the phone bank was supervised. And for reasons just like this, because people who are newly into treatment, they're very sick. They're angry. They're now don't have their drug of choice. So they're withdrawing. They're going through acute withdrawals. They're going through post-acute withdrawal syndrome, which is, withdrawals can last depending on your drug of choice for years afterwards, your brain, it really like coming off of substances, especially from people who have used for a long time, it's like your body completely, it's like Transformer. Your body transforms, and initially it's very challenging. And so people are angry. They're angry at the people who made them come. They're angry at the world. They don't want to be there, right? These are not new situations. And so the reason why phones are supervised is because there would be people who would be having arguments and screaming. And then a staff member would have to say, okay, we need to end this call now. Take them to their individual therapist and say, is this something we need to resolve in family therapy? And then the therapist would call the family member, right? I worked in a really good facility. I really did. I'm very honored to have worked there. It taught me a lot. But here's what I'll say. Facilities that lean concierge. And what I mean by that is private pay. So the facility that Jax went to, it's $30,000, private pay. I don't know if they take insurance or it's just that Jax doesn't have insurance. I'm not sure. But those types of facilities tend to have more lax rules. And this is why they shouldn't. This is why. Because Jax isn't special. He's like every other addict, not every addict is abusive to a partner. But my point is that there is a gap in communication here between the facility, the therapist, and Jax, because clearly he's not telling them that that's what he's doing, but no one is supervising him and he can just do anything he wants. And so to me, just being in the field, that leaves the door open for a lot of problems. And in my opinion, I don't think that facility is doing their job because so if this is what Jax is doing, then at least Brittany should be getting a call and having a family therapy session about what is going on and confronting Jax about this and making that part of his treatment plan. But that's not what's happening. And so I hope that explains it. Again, I don't understand treatment in California. There are things that people could get away with there that certainly here they could never. Even at treatment facilities here that maybe aren't the best, phone use is something that is really regulated for, again, reasons just like this. Also, the last thing I'll say on this is that when people are getting into recovery and they don't want to be, they will look for every excuse, every out, everything to distract themselves. And so communicating with family members is like a distraction. And really, the last thing I'll say here is that we also had a rule when people came into treatment is that they couldn't make a call for, I think it was 10 days or a week or something, because that's by design. You want people to integrate into the sober community. And when they're constantly having contact with the outside world, it's harder for them to do that. So, and then because also here's the thing, Kristen gets a text from Jax saying like, I love it here. I'm so happy. And then he's quietly rage texting Brittany behind the scenes. And it's like, he shouldn't be allowed to do that either. And so Brittany clearly felt validated when Kristen realized she was being manipulated. And here's the thing. I believe that Jax is punishing Brittany for having the audacity to walk away. If I'm being honest, I think this is about his ego. I think this is about his king baby stuff. And I think it's one of those, it gives me flavors. If I can't have you, nobody will. Or if I can't have you, you're not going to be happy. And that is really scary stuff. Really, really, really scary. And so if someone listening to this is in the scenario where they feel like heard or seen because of these behaviors, please listen to that, because these behaviors are abusive and inappropriate and just really gross all around. And if you're experiencing anything like this, please choose you, is just what I want to say. So what else so we get screenshots of the verbally abusive texts that Jax sent to Brittany. And just to be clear, the texts are pathetic attempts at deflection, projection, denial, and displacement. And then we see a video from Jax where he tries to manipulate viewers. And I just said, like, on my Instagram, please don't fall for it. And how do I know? How do I know it's a manipulation? Jax immediately talked about feeling alone and neglected and wishing Brittany would have checked in on him more, saying that when we got married, it's in sickness and in health and I'm sick. Okay, no, sir. And this is the last thing I'm going to say before I wrap up here, is that here's the problem with the statement. Number one, there is no humility, ownership, or accountability whatsoever. Absolutely no awareness of his role in his own issues. and he is still actively blaming Brittany for abandoning him rather than examining his behaviors. 2, Jax threw a table at Brittany, injuring her. He continually put Brittany and Cruz in unsafe situations because he is unable to contain his rage. The disease of addiction deserves empathy, but sometimes the behaviors do not. I will repeat that. The disease of addiction deserves empathy, but sometimes the behaviors do not. Jax needs to understand, and I need everyone listening to this to understand, is that abusive behaviors remove any expectation of reciprocity, empathy, or understanding. When someone is being abusive or having an abusive behavior, there is no longer this reciprocity of no, that person is 100% wrong. Even if Brittany started out being wrong, when abuse comes into it, he is 100% wrong. And Brittany owes him nothing. Okay. So I just want to say that there is no excuse for removing someone's sense of safety because we are angry. Jax fails to accept that he deserves the consequences that he's receiving. And on Watch What Happens Live, Zach confirms that Jax has maintained these really troubling behaviors post-treatment, and Jax doesn't want to change. Jax doesn't want to change. He just wants you all and Alex Baskin to think that he's changed so that he can still make money and have a career. And so the last thing I'm going to say is that abuse isn't love. And we all deserve safety and we all deserve better. And I'm at this really frustrating phase where I don't know how long I can in good conscience watch the Valley or cover Jax if he's just doing the same shit. Now, I think that he needs to be off of Bravo. So the last thing that I'm going to say, and I want to say it with my whole chest, is that I think Bravo needs to really reevaluate the level of sickness that they're willing to give us for quote unquote entertainment. I think Bravo needs to focus less on the bottom line and more on the quality of people that we're having on these shows. Because I'm going to tell you what, Jax should not be on TV anymore. This man has been triggering the absolute shit out of so many people who have been in abusive, unhealthy relationships. This man does not deserve a platform. If he cannot change, if he cannot say, you know what, I'm going to take accountability. I'm going to look at my shit. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to go to treatment. I'm going to try. That Jax would deserve to be on TV. This Jax does not. I'm calling on Bravo. Get Jax off of our TVs. If this man continues to be an abusive king baby, get him off our screens. And that's how I'm going to end this episode. I can't wait to hear all the hate that I get for that. But you know, I am never going to compromise my morals, ethics, and values for a show. Not going to do it. And I feel really good about that. And so for me, if I can take something good out of something inherently gross and disgusting, well, then I've done my part. But I really think Jax needs to go. So for today, this is going to be it for me. I just want to say that I'm feeling much better. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for all of your support. Please check me out, Your Bish Therapist, YouTube, Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook, any social media. You can find this podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. Full video, ad-free is on my Patreon. Full video, ad-free is on my YouTube. And I just thank you so much for everything. Thank you for listening. Love to you and yours, and ta-ta for now. Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your Bish Therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Great Heart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT Podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, hear on YBT Podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.